The goat's jaw worked in steady, rhythmic circles, an audible crunch echoing in the quiet of the backyard. Bits of something shiny, maybe silver, maybe glass, glinted in the animal's mouth as it chewed, tail flicking lazily like it had no idea it was the center of the storm. Or maybe it did. Maya wasn't sure anymore. The officer beside her looked down, confused, his hand resting near the notepad he hadn't yet opened. "You're saying the goat did it?" he asked, slow and disbelieving, drawing out each word as though she'd just accused the family pet of masterminding a jewel heist. Maya didn't look away from the goat. "I'm saying the evidence is in its mouth." The goat blinked, indifferent. The officer sighed and scratched the back of his neck. "Right. Well, why don't we go over this from the top, Miss Sharma?" Maya closed her eyes, just for a second. This moment, standing here in the dying afternoon light, hands trembling slightly as adrenaline ebbed, a goat chewing on what looked suspiciously like a gemstone, felt like the absurd punchline to a joke her life had been writing for years. It didn't begin here, with the goat and the stolen necklace. It began long before, in the cracks of a family splintered by jealousy and bruised by inheritance. The Sharma family estate wasn't grand in the way of palaces or old colonial mansions, but it had stood for generations on the edge of their sleepy town like a stubborn relic. And inside its slightly crooked walls lived the tension of two very different sisters bound by blood, resentment, and obligation. Maya, the elder by 4 years, had always been the dependable one. Straight-A student, caregiver to their ailing father before he passed, and the one who had stayed behind to help their mother manage the house and finances. She carried burdens like other people wore jewelry, quietly, daily, without fuss. Lila, on the other hand, had a flair for drama and a taste for the extravagant. She had left home the moment she could, chasing dreams and fashion and men in equal measure. Her return to the estate had been abrupt, citing a pause in her journey to reconnect with her roots, words that, to Maya, translated directly to needed money and a free place to stay. The tension between them was not the stuff of screaming matches or slammed doors. It was the slow, cold sort, barbed comments over dinner, deliberate silences in shared hallways, the way Lila always looked at Maya like she was a life raft wrapped in chains. And then there was the inheritance. After their father died, everything had gone to their mother, who had made vague and noncommittal statements over the years about how she would divide things fairly one day. That day never seemed to arrive. But one thing had always been clear: the diamond necklace, a family heirloom passed down from their great-grandmother, was promised to Maya. Not because Maya wanted it, jewelry wasn't her style, but because their mother said it would be safe with her. Lila hated that. She brought it up at every possible turn, usually with a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. "It's not like Maya even wears it," she would say, swirling her wine glass. "It just sits in her drawer. I mean, if it were mine, at least it'd see the light of day." Maya would ignore her. It was easier that way. Still, the necklace remained untouched, locked away in their mother's old room, nestled in a velvet-lined box as if waiting for the right moment to stir trouble. And stir it did. The days leading up to the disappearance were oddly quiet. Their mother had gone on a short religious retreat to the hills, leaving the sisters alone in the house for the first time in years. Maya had kept to her routines, checking on the accounts, tending to the vegetable garden, feeding the goat that had somehow become more hers than the family's. The goat, named Pudding by their late father in a rare burst of whimsy, was a sturdy, scruffy creature with a fondness for sneaking into the kitchen and an uncanny ability to find things that weren't his. He'd once eaten an entire silk scarf of Lila's. No one ever understood why he was kept around. Maya suspected it was mostly out of habit, and her father's memory. Then the necklace vanished. Lila's scream had echoed through the house one morning, a sharp, piercing sound that pulled Maya from her bed and into their mother's room, where Lila stood clutching the empty velvet box like it had personally betrayed her. "It's gone," she hissed, eyes wild. "You took it." Maya stared at her, too stunned to speak. "What? You were the last one in here. I saw you yesterday. Don't even try to deny it." It was true, Maya had come in to water the plants near the window. She hadn't even looked at the jewelry box. But the accusation hung in the air like smoke, thick and cloying. No matter what she said, Lila was already convinced. The seed had been planted, and the roots of suspicion were spreading fast. Now, with the goat idly chewing under the jacaranda tree and the police officer watching her like she might sprout horns herself, Maya felt the full weight of that moment. The lies. The blame. The ridiculous, almost poetic possibility that the truth had been here all along, chewing, digesting, waiting. She looked at the goat again. It blinked, swallowed, and opened its mouth to chew some more. Something shiny dropped from its lips into the dirt. The officer followed her gaze. "Is that?" "Yeah," Maya said, stepping forward. "That's the truth. Or at least the part of it nobody saw coming." The Sharma estate was a peculiar blend of tradition and time-worn charm, tucked away on the edge of a small town where everyone knew everyone, and gossip traveled faster than traffic. It stood atop a slight hill, flanked by jacaranda trees that carpeted the walkway in violet petals during spring. The two-story house bore the soft wrinkles of age, faded paint, creaking floorboards, and ivy that wrapped around its stone columns like aging fingers. But beneath its modest exterior lay decades of family legacy, both in cherished memories and unspoken grudges. Inside, the house was a museum of sorts, frozen in time. The furniture, while polished, bore marks of age, water rings on tabletops, upholstery dulled by sunlight. The hallway walls were lined with black and white portraits of stern ancestors who seemed to frown down disapprovingly at modernity. A brass cuckoo clock chimed every hour, slightly offbeat, its chime echoing through rooms that hadn't seen guests in years. In the heart of the house was the master bedroom, their late father's old space, now occupied solely by their mother. The room was a shrine to the past, ornate teak cabinets, embroidered curtains, and a massive four-poster bed with lace-draped corners. The centerpiece, however, was the mahogany dresser near the window. On top of it rested a velvet jewelry box, a rectangular case wrapped in deep blue silk, with a gold latch and a faint floral scent from decades of camphor storage. Inside it lay the crown jewel of the family, the diamond necklace. The necklace was legend in the Sharma household. Passed down through generations, it featured 21 finely cut diamonds set in an intricate gold lattice that curved delicately like a crescent moon. It had only been worn a handful of times: weddings, major religious functions, and once when their mother had been honored for community service. Otherwise, it lived in its box, waiting like a slumbering treasure. Their mother always claimed it would one day go to Maya, for her responsibility and her quiet strength. Lila, unsurprisingly, had never taken that news well. It was the third morning of their mother's absence, a spiritual retreat to an ashram 2 towns over. Maya had gone about her usual routine, made tea, fed Pudding the goat, and pruned the marigolds outside the kitchen. Lila, as usual, was not awake until nearly noon. The two had shared little more than the occasional passing glance since their mother left, which suited both of them just fine. But peace, in the Sharma house, was never a lasting thing. Maya was in the garden when it happened. She heard the scream, not a casual yelp or startled cry, but a deep, guttural shriek that climbed the octave ladder and shattered the silence of the morning. She dropped the trowel instinctively, brushing dirt from her hands as she rushed inside. Lila was in their mother's bedroom, crouched low before the dresser, hair wild, one slipper missing. The jewelry box lay open on the floor, the velvet interior pitifully empty. Her expression was one of theatrical devastation, complete with wide eyes and quivering lips. "It's gone," she said breathlessly, then repeated it, louder, like an incantation. "The necklace is gone." Maya froze in the doorway. "What do you mean, gone?" Lila held up the box like evidence in a courtroom. "Gone, vanished, disappeared. Someone took it." Maya stepped forward cautiously. Maybe it was moved. Maybe Ma took it with her for some reason." "Oh, please," Lila snapped, standing now, her rage simmering. "When was the last time Ma took it anywhere? She's barely opened this box in a year." "No, this," she paused, her eyes narrowing. "This was you." Maya blinked. "Me? You were the last person in here." I saw you yesterday afternoon, fiddling around near the dresser. What were you doing? Watering the plants by the window, Maya replied slowly. The spider lily was wilting. That's convenient. That's the truth. Lila's voice rose an octave. You were jealous. You always knew she was giving it to you, but it wasn't enough, was it? You wanted it now. You just couldn't wait, could you? That's absurd. You always pretend to be the perfect daughter, Maya, Lila hissed, her face flushing. But you're just good at hiding things. Always hiding things. Well, not this time. Maya stared at her sister, heart pounding. The air in the room had turned electric, heavy with accusation and old wounds flaring open. She glanced at the dresser, then the open jewelry box, and felt the slow, creeping weight of inevitability settle on her shoulders. It didn't matter what she said. Lila had made up her mind. I didn't take it, Maya said quietly. No? Then where is it? Lila stepped closer, eyes burning. Did you sell it? Hide it? Planning to pin it on me when Ma gets back? Maya shook her head, disbelief sinking in. This is insane. It's theft. A silence fell between them, jagged and painful. Maya turned and walked out before the anger bubbling in her chest found words she couldn't take back. She stood in the hallway, hands shaking. Her mind raced through the possibilities. Could their mother really have taken it? Or, had it somehow been misplaced? That seemed unlikely. The necklace never moved without discussion. It was always treated like something sacred. She tried calling her mother's cell, but it went straight to voicemail. The ashram had poor reception, and their mother had left her phone behind intentionally to disconnect. There would be no answers from her side anytime soon. By evening, Lila had already made calls, first to a few relatives, then to a family friend who dabbled in law. Maya overheard her saying words like police and suspicious behavior. That night, at dinner, Maya sat alone in the kitchen, picking at her food while Lila refused to make eye contact. Pudding, ever the opportunist, snuck in through the back door and began sniffing around under the table. Maya watched him, his nose twitching as he moved to the corner of the room. He found a piece of cloth, probably from Lila's laundry, and began gnawing at it with quiet satisfaction. At any other time, Maya might have scolded him or shooed him away. But now she just watched, distracted, her thoughts spiraling. Her mind kept returning to the jewelry box, the accusing look in Lila's eyes, and the locked door that had once kept secrets safe but now held her under silent suspicion. The necklace was gone. Her mother was unreachable. And her sister had drawn a line in the sand. The storm had begun. The next morning, the house didn't just feel tense, it felt hostile. The air was thick with quiet accusations, and every creak of the old wooden floorboards echoed like footsteps in a courtroom. Maya had barely slept. She'd lain awake staring at the ceiling fan rotating with dull persistence, going over every detail of the previous day, wondering how she had ended up here, the accused in a crime she hadn't committed. Downstairs, she heard voices. Not just Lila's, but others too, muffled and familiar. Curious and wary, she descended the staircase and paused just before entering the drawing room. Lila was seated on the cream leather sofa, legs elegantly crossed, holding a cup of tea she hadn't made herself. Across from her were Mrs. Chawla and Mr. Bose, two neighbors who thrived on local gossip like bees on sugar. Maya stepped into view just as Lila gestured dramatically, saying, "I just couldn't believe it. That necklace has been in our family for generations. And now, poof. Gone." Mrs. Chawla gasped. Stolen? My God. Who would do such a thing? I have suspicions, Lila said with a theatrical pause, then turned her gaze slowly toward Maya. But we'll wait for the proper authorities. Maya's stomach turned. You're spreading this to neighbors now? I'm just informing our community. They deserve to know someone around here isn't who she pretends to be. Lila, that necklace has probably just been misplaced. You mean hidden? Lila's eyes flashed. I've checked the whole room. Top to bottom. Unless it walked off by itself, someone took it. And you're the only one who was in there. Maya opened her mouth to argue, but Mr. Bose raised a bushy eyebrow. Weren't you watering plants near the dresser? Yes, Maya said carefully. But I didn't open the jewelry box. I didn't touch anything. Lila let out a dry laugh. Of course not. And I'm the Queen of England. The tension in the room was thick enough to suffocate. Maya turned and walked out without another word, retreating to the kitchen where she gripped the counter until her knuckles turned white. Her pulse thudded in her ears. This wasn't just about a missing necklace anymore. Lila was weaving a story around her, one thread at a time, and the audience was already nodding along. Later that afternoon, it got worse. Their aunt, Buaniti, arrived uninvited, dramatically clutching her shawl and muttering about disgrace and family honor. Maya was called into the living room like a defendant summoned to trial. Needy didn't waste time. Tell me, Beta, she said, peering at Maya over her glasses, did you think no one would notice? Did you think you'd just take it and we'd all forget? Bua, Maya said evenly, I didn't take anything. But you were the only one here with Lila. You have to understand how it looks. How it looks doesn't mean anything if it's not true. But optics matter, Needy said, sipping her tea. Especially when it comes to family matters. Lila chimed in, voice syrupy. I'm not trying to stir trouble, Bua. I'm just trying to protect Ma's legacy. Maya looked around the room at faces she had grown up seeing during every Diwali and Holi, faces that once smiled warmly at her. Now, they wore masks of suspicion. Her throat tightened. She wanted to scream. But she knew any outburst would only make her look more guilty. So she stood quietly, letting silence speak for her. That evening, she retreated to the backyard. The sun was dipping low, casting gold across the dried grass and worn stone path. She needed space. Air. Sanity. She sat on the old bench under the neem tree and buried her face in her hands. A snort broke the silence. Maya looked up. Pudding, the family goat, stood a few feet away, chewing on what looked like the sleeve of someone's shirt. His beady eyes stared at her, unbothered, as he gnawed methodically. He looked ridiculous. And yet, strangely comforting. Pudding had been a fixture in the Sharma household since their father had brought him home from a farmer's market 7 years ago. At first, everyone thought it was a joke. But the goat stayed. He had his own corner in the backyard, a makeshift shelter, and a fondness for sneaking into the kitchen through the back door whenever it was left even slightly ajar. He had, over the years, eaten at least 3 socks, 1 passport, Lila's, which she never forgave, and part of a curtain. He had no boundaries and no shame. He was also, in many ways, Maya's only ally in the house these days. She stood up and walked over to him. You're the only one who doesn't think I'm a thief, aren't you? Pudding sneezed. Maya bent down to tug the shirt piece from his mouth. It was one of Lila's, expensive fabric, now ruined. She sighed and gave up. There was no winning with Pudding once he had his teeth in something. He followed her as she returned to the bench and sat beside her like a strange, hairy dog. She rested her hand on his head, stroking the short fur. Inside the house, voices murmured again. Lila was no doubt weaving more tales, pulling relatives into the fold of her version of events. Maya felt like she was slowly being edged out of her own life. Her sense of safety, of truth being enough, was slipping through her fingers. She had tried to call their mother again. Still no answer. She had even considered calling the police herself, to report the necklace missing, to get the process underway so she could prove her innocence. But the idea of handing this story over to strangers who didn't know her or Lila, who might believe charm over character, terrified her. Pudding bleated softly beside her. You're not very helpful, you know, Maya muttered. The goat blinked, utterly unconcerned. Still, there was something about his presence. Something grounding. Maybe it was that he didn't care about family drama, or legacy, or who got the necklace. He just wanted to eat and nap and chew on things he wasn't supposed to. And yet, he was always there. Watching. Listening. Chewing. Always chewing. Maya narrowed her eyes. Wait, where did you get that shirt? Pudding, predictably, did not answer. The goat stood up and waddled toward the tool shed, where he paused, sniffed, then bleated again before disappearing behind it. Maya stared after him, a strange chill creeping up her spine. Something about him was off. Or maybe everything was off, and she was just now noticing it. She stood slowly, brushing dust from her palms. Maybe it was nothing. Or maybe, just maybe, her only ally had been watching more closely than anyone realized. The sun rose reluctantly the next morning, casting a grayish hue over the Sharma estate as if even the day itself wasn't eager to begin. Maya hadn't slept much again, but this time it wasn't anxiety keeping her awake, it was determination. The indignity of being painted as a thief in her own home had shifted something inside her. If no one would believe she didn't take the necklace, she would have to prove it herself. By mid-morning, Lila had gone into town, likely to fan the flames of gossip even further. Maya took the opportunity to begin her quiet investigation. She started near her mother's room. Carefully retracing her steps from the last day she had been in there, she looked over the furniture, the floor, even the dusty corners that had been untouched for months. Nothing seemed out of place, but the absence of any clues only made the situation more maddening. If the necklace wasn't here, and she hadn't taken it, then where could it have gone? She wandered toward her own room next, almost absently. As she stepped out the back door and circled around, something caught her eye, a small cluster of hoofprints in the soft dirt beneath her bedroom window. She frowned. Pudding rarely came this close to the house, preferring the backyard and kitchen area. He'd always been more interested in the vegetable patch than in bedrooms. And yet here were clear impressions, tiny, split hoof prints pressed into the soil. A few even overlapped with what looked like a disturbance, as if something had been dragged or dropped nearby. Maya crouched low, brushing away some fallen leaves. The soil here had definitely been dug up recently. It was subtle, someone less familiar with the garden might have missed it, but Maya had tended this earth for years. She could spot even the smallest disruption. Her heart beat a little faster. She followed the trail, or what little of it she could discern, toward the backyard where Pudding's pen sat in its usual messy state. A broken rake leaned against the fence, and the goat's old rubber ball lay in the grass, half-chewed and ignored. And then she saw it, something glinting just beneath the hay at the edge of the pen. A flicker of gold catching the light. Maya stepped closer, heart thudding. She squinted, trying to make out what it was. Whatever it was small and shiny, half buried under scattered straw. Not big enough to be the necklace itself, but perhaps a piece of it. A broken clasp? A charm? She unlatched the gate and stepped inside the pen, crouching toward the glinting object. Her fingers were just inches away when a loud voice called from the back porch. Maya. She jumped, startled, losing her balance for a moment as she turned to see Aunt Needy standing with her arms crossed and a disapproving scowl plastered across her face. I've been calling you for 5 minutes, Needy said, descending the steps with practiced superiority. Honestly, hiding in the goat pen now? What are you doing? Maya wiped her hands quickly on her kurta, frustrated. Just checking on Pudding. He's been off lately. Needy sniffed. That animal is a menace. I told your mother we should have gotten rid of it years ago. Maya glanced over her shoulder. The glinting object was now obscured again, tucked under a fresh pile of hay Pudding had pawed forward while she was distracted. Her moment was gone. I need to speak to you about your behavior, Needy said, stepping closer. All this sneaking about, sulking in corners. It's not doing you any favors. Maya clenched her jaw. I didn't steal the necklace. Well, Needy said, adjusting her shawl, intentions don't always matter. Outcomes do. And right now, the outcome looks very bad for you. Maya didn't respond. She couldn't, not without screaming. Instead, she stepped out of the pen, locking the gate behind her as Pudding snorted and nibbled indifferently on a piece of cardboard. Needy walked with her back toward the house, lecturing softly about family reputation and maturity, but Maya barely heard her. Her mind was still in the goat pen, staring at the spot where something shiny, waited under the hay. Later that night, she sat at the edge of her bed with the bedroom window cracked open. The night breeze carried the scent of jasmine and earth. From the distance came the sound of Pudding bleating lazily in his sleep. She hadn't had the chance to go back. Not yet. But she would. As soon as she could. Because now, for the first time since the whole mess began, she had a thread to pull. And she was going to follow it, no matter where it led. It was just past noon when the police arrived. 2 officers stood on the front porch in full uniform, their presence casting a long shadow across the tiled floor of the entryway. One was older, mustached, with a tired expression that suggested he'd seen far too many petty family dramas. The other, younger and sharper-eyed, looked as if he relished the thought of a good interrogation. Behind them, standing tall and smug in the sunlight, was Lila. "I thought it best to make this official," she said, brushing an invisible speck of dust off her sleeve. "We can't let this sort of thing slide, not with family jewelry involved." Maya, standing by the staircase, didn't respond. Her heart thudded low and hard in her chest as the officers stepped inside. The older one, Inspector Deshmukh, introduced himself with the kind of bored professionalism that came from decades of village cases, most of them inconsequential. "We're here to ask a few questions." "A routine inquiry," he said, although his gaze was sharp. "The missing necklace." "I didn't take it," Maya said immediately. The younger officer, Constable Rawat, scribbled something in his notebook. "Let's start from the beginning. When was the last time you saw the item?" Maya took a deep breath. 3 days ago. I was watering plants in Ma's room. The necklace was still in the case on the dresser. And after that? I went to the garden. Then to the back shed to look for gloves. I was outside most of the day." "Alone?" Rawat asked, tilting his head. "Yes. No one can confirm your whereabouts." She hesitated. "No. Not exactly." Inspector Deshmukh sighed. "You understand how this looks, right? You had access to the room. No one else was nearby. Now the necklace is gone." Maya forced herself to stay calm. "I'm telling you the truth. I didn't take anything." Lila, sitting in the adjacent armchair with all the grace of a self-appointed queen, chimed in. "She's always had resentment about who'd inherit what. This isn't about a necklace. It's about what she thinks she deserves." Maya turned to her sister, voice low. "You're twisting everything." "I'm pointing out facts," Lila said sweetly. "The truth has a way of sounding cruel when you're guilty." Constable Rawat continued asking questions, about her schedule, where she'd kept her phone, whether she'd seen anyone near the room, and with each answer, Maya felt her position weakening. There was no proof of where she'd been. Just her word, and right now, that seemed to hold little weight. Deshmukh eventually closed his notebook. "We'll need to take a formal statement. And if the item isn't recovered, we may have to escalate this further. Just a heads up." He gave her a long look before walking out to speak with the constable in hushed tones by the patrol car. Maya collapsed into the nearest chair, her whole body tense. Needy gave her a glance full of awkward sympathy but said nothing. The silence that followed was heavy and final. The moment they'd called the police, this had stopped being a family issue. It was a legal one now. And amid all of it, Pudding chose that exact moment to wander through the living room with one of Lila's silk scarves dragging from his mouth like a flag of war. Lila screeched. "Pudding! Oh my God, give that back!" The goat blinked, utterly unmoved, and trotted behind the sofa. Maya watched him, an odd flicker of recognition dawning. This wasn't the first time he had dragged something of Lila's. Over the last few days, he'd taken a shawl, a slipper, and, Maya was almost sure, a piece of velvet that had once lined the inside of their mother's jewelry box. He wasn't just chewing aimlessly. He was taking very specific things. "Get him out of here!" Lila shouted. Maya stood up slowly. "He's always around, isn't he?" she said quietly. "Even when no one's watching." "Because he's annoying," Lila snapped. "And gross." Maya walked over to Pudding, who was now attempting to wedge himself beneath the coffee table with the scarf still in tow. She crouched next to him and reached for the end of the fabric, her fingers brushing against something hidden underneath. A small bead. No, not a bead, more like a charm. Gold, circular, with a tiny inlaid ruby in the center. She froze. It matched the design of the necklace. The officers were still outside. Maya stood slowly, palm closed around the charm, her mind racing. If Pudding had this, what else did he have? And where had he taken it from? It wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was a lead. And Pudding, chaotic, ridiculous Pudding, might have been the only one in the entire household who had seen what really happened. The next morning, Maya woke with a singular focus burning in her mind. She skipped tea, ignored the wary glances from Niti and the disdainful silence from Lila, and headed straight for the backyard. The goat pen had become a curiosity she could no longer afford to ignore. It was a crime scene in plain sight. Pudding was already up, munching lazily on the edge of an empty flower pot. He looked up briefly at Maya, unimpressed, before going back to his breakfast. Maya opened the rickety gate slowly and stepped inside. The ground squelched under her sandals, a mixture of old straw, dirt, and scattered bits of chewed cloth and wrappers. The pen had always been chaotic, but today she didn't let the mess distract her. She crouched down by the far end where she'd seen the glinting object a few days earlier. Pudding sauntered over, curious but not alarmed, and gave her hand an absent-minded sniff. Maya ignored him and began pushing aside the straw, piece by piece, until bare earth peeked through. She expected to find the gold charm again. She did not expect to find an entire hoard. Beneath the hay, nestled in a shallow dip in the dirt like a child's buried treasure, lay a bizarre collection of shiny items: a cracked compact mirror, a half-eaten chocolate wrapper with foil intact, a single golden earring, a set of keys missing for weeks, and, Maya's breath caught, a delicate length of gold chain. She reached down and picked it up with trembling fingers. It was unmistakable. The delicate filigree, the faint scent of her mother's perfume still lingering on the metal, it was the missing necklace. Or at least, part of it. The chain was broken cleanly at one end, and several stones were missing, but this was it. She was holding the very piece that had turned her life upside down. Her fingers shook as she looked from the necklace fragment to the rest of the stash. Pudding wandered behind her, unconcerned, and began gnawing at a shoelace tied to the gate. Maya sank to her knees, half laughing and half in shock. "You little thief," she whispered. It all made sense now. The missing bits of cloth, the shiny things going missing, the misplaced earring Buaniti swore she'd left on the counter. Pudding had taken them. Or rather, he had collected them. Anything small and sparkly or soft enough to chew had ended up in his hidden cache beneath the hay. Maya sat back on her heels. The absurdity of it all nearly made her dizzy. The police had been called. Her name had been tarnished. Accusations had flown across the family like arrows. All over a goat with kleptomaniac tendencies. But this wasn't just a punchline, it was proof. Actual evidence. She needed to show someone. The police. Her mother, when she finally returned. Even Lila, though Maya already dreaded her reaction. But first, she had to secure the rest of the necklace. Carefully, she sifted through the pile, searching for more fragments. One by one, she found them: the ruby-studded centerpiece, 2 more segments of the chain, and 1 golden clasp barely hanging on. She laid them all out on a piece of cardboard scavenged from beside the pen. The necklace wasn't entirely intact, but it was whole enough to identify. The realization hit her with a wave of relief so intense her eyes stung. And then, inevitably, came the anger. All the whispers, the judgment, the pitying looks, she had borne them for days. Alone. Because of a goat. Because no one believed her. Because Lila had been too eager to accuse and everyone else too eager to believe it. Maya stood slowly, gathering the necklace pieces into a small cloth pouch she kept in her pocket. She gave Pudding one last glance. "You might have ruined my life," she muttered, "but I think you just saved it too." Pudding sneezed. Back inside, she avoided Lila and Needy, slipping into her room to hide the recovered necklace. She needed a plan. Walking out and tossing it on the dining table wouldn't work, not with Lila's pride and the police already involved. No, she needed to do this carefully. Cleanly. Officially. She needed to call Inspector Deshmukh and tell him she had found evidence. She'd explain the truth. And this time, she wouldn't stammer or second-guess. She had facts, fragments, and, most absurdly, a goat for a witness. The humiliation of the last few days hadn't vanished, but it had transformed into something sharper, steadier. Resolve. Maya looked out the window at the goat pen. Pudding had gone back to chewing on the flower pot, content in his little world of chaos. She shook her head, amazed. This wasn't over yet. But for the first time in days, she wasn't on the defensive anymore. She was ready to fight back, with the truth in her pocket and dirt on her hands. Maya stood on the porch that afternoon, the pouch with the necklace fragments safe in her pocket, her mind already racing to the next step. The police would want answers, so would everyone else. And while she had part of the necklace, there were still too many unanswered questions. Proof was key, especially with Lila circling like a hawk, ready to deny or discredit anything Maya said. She needed more than recovered evidence. She needed undeniable truth. That's when she remembered Mr. Chawla from 2 houses down. An ex-forest ranger with a yard full of strange tools and tales of tigers and camera traps, Mr. Chawla was known for loaning out odd gadgets to neighbors whenever the squirrels got too bold or stray dogs made a mess of their flower beds. If anyone had something Maya could use to catch the goat in action, it was him. She wasted no time. Within an hour, Maya was standing in his cluttered garage as he rummaged through a plastic bin labeled trail cams and traps. Dust floated in the afternoon light as he held up a small, weather-worn motion-activated wildlife camera. "Still works? Got good range. You mounting it to catch poachers or ghosts?" he asked with a chuckle. "Just a thief," Maya said. He raised an eyebrow but didn't press. "Well then. Set it up low, near wherever you think the action's happening. Keep it steady. Motion will trigger recording. SD cards inside." She thanked him and hurried home, camera in hand, a plan forming. By dusk, she had mounted the trail cam just behind the wooden crate beside the goat pen, angled toward the kitchen side of the house. From there, it had a view of the yard, the back door, and part of the open corridor that led to the side rooms, one of which was Lila's. She left it overnight. The next morning, long before anyone else stirred, she crept outside and retrieved the camera. Her fingers fumbled slightly as she slid the SD card into her laptop. What she saw made her stare, mouth half open in disbelief. The first few clips were uneventful, Pudding sleeping. Pudding standing. Pudding staring suspiciously at a butterfly. But then came the key footage. Timestamped 2 nights ago, around 10:47 p.m., Pudding appeared at the edge of the frame, poking his snout around the corridor. A minute later, he ambled forward with startling purpose, heading directly for the door that had been left slightly ajar. Lila's door. He slipped inside. The motion sensor flicked off, but another video began moments later as he exited, dragging something behind him. A shimmering object caught the camera's view. A dangling chain. Gold. It glinted under the porch light as Pudding tugged it toward the yard with methodical, ridiculous determination. Maya froze the frame and zoomed in. The necklace. He had taken it from Lila's room. The next few clips showed Pudding hiding it under the straw in his pen, nudging at the dirt with his hoof, burying it among the shiny things like a dragon with treasure. And then, satisfied, he sat on top of it and started chewing an empty biscuit packet. Maya sat back in her chair, stunned. It hadn't come from her mother's room at all. It had come from Lila's. Which meant either Lila had stolen it herself, or found it, hidden it, and blamed Maya before any facts were known. Her mind whirled. Was it malice? Manipulation? A mistake? Either way, Maya now had video proof that she hadn't taken the necklace, and that it had, undeniably, been in Lila's room the night it vanished. She copied the footage onto a USB drive. She would call Inspector Deshmukh soon. This changed everything. As the sun rose fully and the house stirred with the noise of morning tea, Maya stood in the hallway, watching Pudding trot lazily past with a piece of cardboard in his mouth. He paused at her feet, blinked up at her as if nothing at all had happened, and wandered toward the kitchen. He had no idea the storm he was about to unravel. For once, Maya didn't care what Lila had to say. Because this time, the goat had the last word, on camera. Maya stood in the living room, the USB drive clenched tightly in her hand. The afternoon light filtered through the lace curtains, casting soft patterns across the floor, patterns that seemed strangely at odds with the tension coiling in the air. She wasn't sure how this confrontation would go. Lila's pride was as sharp as ever, and the footage, while damning, might not be enough to break through her sister's defenses. But Maya had to try. Lila lounged on the sofa, scrolling through her phone with the bored air of someone who believed she had already won. Maya took a deep breath and spoke before she could change her mind. "I have something you need to see." Lila looked up, one eyebrow raised. "Oh? What now? Another one of your discoveries?" Maya ignored the jab and plugged the USB into the television. The video began to play. The room went silent as the grainy footage showed Pudding slipping inside Lila's room, dragging the sparkling gold chain behind him, and burying it in his pen. The camera captured every detail, from the subtle gleam of the jewelry to the determined way the goat pawed at the dirt. Lila's eyes widened, her face paling. That's not possible," she stammered. "You must have faked this. Edited it." Maya's voice was steady. "You think I'd go through all this just to frame you? For what? Revenge? The necklace was stolen, and now you're caught." Lila's mouth twitched, and then she scoffed, standing up abruptly. "You always think you're right. But this isn't proof." Before Maya could reply, the atmosphere shifted. A sudden commotion from the backyard drew everyone's attention. Pudding, the goat at the center of this drama, had suddenly started bleating loudly and pacing near the kitchen door. "What now?" Lila snapped. Maya moved closer to the doorway, curiosity piqued. Then, in an astonishing moment that seemed almost surreal, Pudding stopped pacing. He turned, lowered his head, and, without warning, regurgitated a small bundle onto the floor. Everyone froze. Maya rushed forward and carefully unwrapped the tangled mass. Inside was a torn piece of silk cloth, recognizable as one of Lila's favorite scarves, with a small, sparkling pendant still attached. The family gasped. Needy stepped forward, eyes wide. "That was missing too. Lila said it was lost weeks ago." Lila's cheeks flushed a deep crimson. She looked from the pendant to the footage, then back at the goat. Maya felt a surge of vindication but kept her tone calm. "Pudding's been collecting things from your room all along." Lila's voice cracked. "You don't understand." "I didn't mean to." "Meaning doesn't change the facts," Maya said quietly. The room buzzed with whispered conversations as relatives gathered around, the earlier accusations now shifting in light of this new evidence. Even the police officers, who had come back for another visit, watched with interest. Pudding, oblivious to the weight of his discovery, simply blinked slowly, chewing on a stray blade of grass. For the first time since the necklace disappeared, the truth was no longer just a suspicion or a theory. It was undeniable. Lila slumped onto the sofa, defeated but still not quite ready to admit the full story. Maya, however, felt a strange mixture of relief and sadness. The rivalry between them had spiraled into something ugly, but now there was a chance to heal, to rebuild trust that had been shattered. And it all started with a goat, a handful of dirt, and a camera that caught the hidden truth. The family would never look at Pudding the same way again. Their mother's arrival was like a sudden storm sweeping through the house. The moment her car pulled up the winding driveway, the tense silence inside the estate shattered. She stepped out, sharp-eyed, graceful, and unmistakably authoritative, and the entire family gathered nervously in the living room to greet her. Maya held the recovered necklace fragments in her hands, the evidence still carefully wrapped in a cloth. Lila sat quietly on the sofa, her usual bravado dampened but not extinguished. The air was thick with unspoken questions and the weight of days spent in suspicion. As soon as their mother stepped inside, she scanned the room, her gaze sharp and unforgiving. "What is this mess?" she demanded. Maya swallowed hard but met her mother's eyes. "The necklace was missing, Ma. But it wasn't me. Pudding, the goat, had it all along." Their mother's eyes flicked to the goat, who was chewing contentedly on a piece of straw in the corner. "You're telling me this goat has been stealing jewelry?" she asked, incredulous. "It seems so," Maya said quietly. "I found the pieces buried in the goat pen. And we even have footage of him taking the necklace from Lila's room." Lila shifted uncomfortably, avoiding everyone's gaze. Their mother's stern expression softened slightly, but her voice remained firm. "Lila, I'm disappointed. To accuse your sister without proof, it's shameful." Lila's face flushed deeper, and after a long pause, she muttered, "I'm sorry, Ma. I shouldn't have blamed Maya." The apology was forced, tinged with lingering bitterness that didn't escape anyone. Maya felt a mix of relief and exhaustion wash over her. The truth was finally out, but the emotional toll had been immense. The betrayal, the isolation, the doubts, it had all worn her down. Their mother sighed deeply. "This family needs to remember what matters: trust and honesty. We will heal, but it will take time." As the evening settled, the family began to repair the fractures, slowly mending bonds strained by suspicion and pride. Maya sat quietly, the weight of vindication heavy but tempered by the cost of the battle. Outside, Pudding chewed lazily, blissfully unaware of the chaos he had uncovered, an unlikely hero in a tale of theft, blame, and ultimately, truth. News travels fast in small towns, but when the neighbor posted the footage of Pudding, the thieving goat-turned-family detective, the story exploded beyond their quiet village. Within days, the video was shared on social media, picked up by local news outlets, and soon found its way into the headlines of regional newspapers. Headlines like "Goat Caught Red-Hoofed Stealing Jewelry" and "Furry Felon or Family Hero." The goat who solved the mystery amused readers everywhere. The clips of Pudding sneaking into the house, dragging the glittering necklace pieces to his stash, and even regurgitating the cloth with the pendant captivated audiences. The combination of humor, drama, and a touch of the unexpected made the story irresistible. Maya found herself fielding calls and messages from reporters, curious neighbors, and distant relatives she hadn't spoken to in years. Some wanted interviews, others sent congratulatory notes. The goat, who once was just an overlooked pet, became a local celebrity overnight. The family estate saw a steady stream of visitors. Some came to meet Pudding, others to witness the crime scene firsthand. Maya's initial embarrassment faded as she realized the story was not just about stolen jewelry or sibling rivalry, but about truth, resilience, and the unexpected ways justice can come to light. Even Lila, despite her earlier resentment, couldn't help but chuckle when the local baker presented her with a cake shaped like a goat. The rivalry softened, if only for a moment. For Maya, the ordeal left a surprising gift, a renewed sense of peace. The chaos that had threatened to consume her became a source of laughter and connection. She often found herself watching Pudding with fond amusement, how a goat's mischievous nature had upended the family drama and revealed truths no one else could see. At night, she'd sometimes whisper to him, "You may be a thief, but you're our thief." And in the quiet that followed, Maya realized that sometimes, justice comes with a little mischief and a whole lot of heart.